Good morning to you, and it's Thursday, and welcome to the Vicarage here at Penn. Lovely to see you, and thank you for joining us today. I hope this finds you well and cheerful, and that you're looking forward to a good day today. Friends, may I ask for your prayers firstly? Not this time of day, but a week on Sunday at St. Bart's, we've got about 20 people getting confirmed, which is fantastic. A few from our church, a few from other churches in the deanery as well. But a really exciting time. So could you please pray for our confirmation candidates? As I say, a week on Sunday, they get confirmed. There's one for your prayers, please. Friends, we are approaching the end of our journey through the letter to the Hebrews. This fantastic book, isn't it? Ram full of some fantastic stuff, which is great. Next week, we'll be starting the beginning of the Gospel of Luke, so looking forward to that as well. But without further ado, it's Hebrews chapter 12. I'm starting to read at verse 12. Here goes. Therefore, lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees, and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be put out of joint, but rather be healed. Pursue peace with everyone, and the holiness without which no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and through it many become defiled. See to it that no one becomes like Esau, an immoral and godless person who sold his birthright for a single meal. You know that later, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, for he found no chance to repent, even though he sought the blessing with tears. You have not come to something that can be touched, a blazing fire, and darkness, and gloom, and a tempest, and the sound of a trumpet, and the voice whose words made the hearers beg that not another word be spoken to them, for they could not endure the order that was given. Even if even an animal touches the mountain, it shall be stoned to death. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I tremble with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion, to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. See that you do not refuse the one who is speaking. For if they did not escape when they refused the one who warned them on earth, how much less will we escape when we reject the one who warns us from heaven? At that time his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heaven. This phrase, yet once more, indicates the removal of what was shaken, that is, created things, so that what cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us give thanks, by which we offer to God an acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for indeed our God is a consuming fire. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so the writer who's writing to the Hebrews, as I said again and again and again, they're people who are having a hard time for their faith, and they've been tempted to shrink back, to go back to other things, or drift away, or to drift away from the faith, and that type of stuff. And basically, the book of Hebrews has given them reason after reason after reason why they shouldn't give up on their faith. And in chapter 12, we've already seen yesterday, he talks about we have a great cloud of witnesses. We've got, the great heroes of the Old Testament all witness to Jesus. So yet another reason why we shouldn't shrink back. We shouldn't give up on the faith. And I guess, again, if you ever want reasons not to give up on the faith, Hebrews is very good for it. Reason after reason after reason why what Jesus did and what Jesus did is so fantastic, we wouldn't want to give up on it, would we? Absolutely right. So, again, he tells them in chapter 12, don't give up. Therefore, he says, with all these kind of, the fact that God even loves us through disciplining us, he even loves us through correcting us, and so on. Therefore, he says, lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees. Make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be put out of joint, but rather be healed. In other words, don't give up, keep going, and you'll be strengthened. And then he goes on to give us 4 or 5 things that we need to do that will help us in this. Okay, firstly, he says in verse 13, pursue peace with everyone. In other words, as much as you can, as Paul would say, seek peace with everybody. because Paul has said that. As much as it's over to you, seek peace with everybody. Obviously, there are going to be times when people don't agree, and there are people that don't like us, and so on, and our Christian gospel is offensive to some people, and all sorts of reasons people can fall out. But we should pursue peace with everyone. We won't always achieve it, but we should pursue it. Actually, being in conflict is remarkably tiring and takes up an awful lot of time and energy and so on. So he says here, one way we can do it is to pursue peace with everyone. And I think that's quite an important message to us all. As much as possible, pursue, seek after. We actively seek after peace with everyone. That way, it's easier to keep your eyes focused on God then. Secondly, he says, and pursue holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. Now, holiness actually means being set apart. That's what it means. It doesn't mean sort of, talking in funny words and spending all your time looking like a monk or whatever it will be. That is right for some people. But it really means, holiness means being set apart. We talk a lot about spirituality these days. So someone said a few years ago, are you talking about holiness there? Spirituality can be a bit wishy-washy for some people. But holiness is actually about being set apart for God. That doesn't mean that we don't get involved in the world. Doesn't mean we live elsewhere and avoid people. But it does mean that in our lives and in our priorities that we are set apart. When we say we're a holy people, we are people set apart for God. Our purpose is to serve God and so on. Thirdly, he says, do not let any root of bitterness spring up. And I think this kind of goes in two ways, really. I think, firstly, inside ourselves, we can fall out and we can disagree and we can have arguments with people. But I think that's different when a root of bitterness springs up. Bitterness is like, when it becomes like part of, it becomes all hardwired in you, and it happens to some people. I know people that have fallen out for years. I know someone that fell out with 15 years with a sister. I know that arguments happen, and it can mean people fall out for year after year after year. Of course, we're all going to fall out sometimes, but really and truly, when it comes to long-term bitterness, life really is too short. And actually, when we're very, very angry with somebody, it's quite hard. You try doing it and praying at the same time. I find it quite a challenging thing. It's also, again, extremely wearing. I'm having a big argument with someone years ago. Went on with it for months. We resolved it, and afterwards it was a bit like I'd taken a rucksack off from my back. I felt I was bouncing around, the energy that I wasn't, and that kind of thing. And the writer here writes, do not let a root of bitterness spring within you. And it's not just within ourselves; it's also within churches as well. I knew a church years ago where they were very lively, but the rector said to me, they're lovely people, but they just can't love each other. And he was absolutely right. They had music groups, and it was a very, very lively group of people and everything else. But they just couldn't love each other. And in the end, 2 or 3 families fell out big time, and the church was never the same again. I don't know what it's like now. It was a few years ago now. But don't let roots of bitterness within ourselves, because it ruins our prayer life and it screws us up as individuals. But also, don't let roots of bitterness spring up in churches as well. Sure, we can debate, we can disagree, we can even debate ferociously sometimes, but don't let a root of bitterness, because actually it spoils lives and it can spoil churches as well. And many churches don't split because of matters of important principle. Often it's about egos and people being with each other and so on. But then he goes on to talk about, the kind of gospel that we are called to. And he makes a contrast between what happens now and what happened with Moses in the Old Testament. And he talks about this mountain here. And it's referring to, if you want to try and check it into your ledger, it's Exodus 19 and 20, where Moses received the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, or Mount Zion. It's described again in Deuteronomy chapter 4, which is a slightly more flowery version, in which he talks about the whole place being sort of on fire with holiness and smoke all around the mountain, and it being so holy that even any animal that was touched the mountain had to be sort of taken on one side and stoned, and it was kind of an incredible picture of holiness and fear and kind of incredibly consuming fire type holiness. And that's what it was like then. That's the kind of holiness then. But you're talking about, we have a different holiness now, that we come to Jesus, that we come into a heavenly Jerusalem, a one which we don't need to tremble at in the same way, that we come to Jesus who did something so much better. So he talks about the holiness, the incredible holiness of the mountain and what Moses is describing. But what we're coming to is so much better. Which you get another reason not to give up, because they had something really special with Moses, but we have something even more special with Jesus. So again, he's saying, don't give up, and way to do it is, make sure you pursue peace with everybody, actively pursue peace with everybody, pursue holiness, be set apart for God. Don't let roots of bitterness spring up inside you or within the church as well. And remember just how incredibly holy it was in the Old Testament with Moses. And we have something even better now.